Tomorrow marks 20 years since Hurricane Katrina's storm surge breached various flood protection structures in and around the greater New Orleans area, submerging 80% of that city.
That's right. That storm left at least 1,200 people dead, with around 900 of those coming from the state of Louisiana. Chief Meteorologist Anthony Yanez is joining us now. So, Anthony, you were working here when that storm hit. The moment the path was forecasted, what was your biggest concern?
My biggest concern was a year before Katrina, there was a speaker at a weather conference I went to who was from New Orleans, and he said his biggest concern was a storm like Katrina, and he kind of made this storm up because it was a year prior, that would hit the levees, the winds, the water, the levees would fail, and New Orleans, the damage would be just incredibly awful. And so when this storm, I got a graphic to show you, when this storm moved into the Gulf, and this is after hitting the state of Florida, and it made this path, I remember being on the air when we were making the forecast. I'm like, this is exactly what this guy talked about. And how are the levees going to do? You didn't know, but he had talked about how weak, how old, how decrepit they were, and how the potential was there for the levees to fail. And I remember forecasting that week, that big concern about this is what could happen. Right. And I remember Brian Williams the morning when Katrina hit. After it moved through, you see there's the two landfalls, and then you have it moving up to the north. He was talking about, well, it looks like they were wrong, all the hype, and it wasn't a big thing. And I remember thinking, I'm like, we don't know how the levees did. And about an hour later, I would say he was back on air and the water was up to his knees.
And when you saw how quickly those waters were rising, what was going through your mind?
You know, it was just, I mean, it became at that point so emotional because you're like, there's people there, obviously.
That's
you know,
right.
not everybody evacuates, and you know, there, people couldn't evacuate. And so you're just like, how bad is this going to be? If you've been to New Orleans, for example, and you go out in certain places and you look at the ships over the water, they look like they're above you. And the reason is because you're below sea level. Right. So you're in a bowl. And so that water comes in and it just sits there. So that was the big concern.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years since Katrina made landfall. What still sticks with you? What still resonates with you about the aftermath?
Well, I think for all of us, whether you worked it or not, all of us have seen those images. And so we know what those images were, how tough it was to see what happened. But also as a forecaster for me, it was after Katrina, you actually had 6 more storms, and then the 7th was Rita. And how those images not only affected us as forecasters, affected everybody here in the Houston area and all of Southeast Texas. And then came Rita, and how we reacted to Rita because of what we saw with Katrina, which was a completely different experience. If Katrina didn't happen, the Rita evacuation wouldn't have happened. And coming up at 6 o'clock, we're going to talk about that, the Rita evacuation because of Katrina.
There were so many lessons learned because of what happened during Katrina.
Yes.
And we'll be airing more stories throughout the broadcast tomorrow as well as we mark 20 years.
And the Rita story is coming up at 6 o'clock, how those two storms are linked and how they affected us in Southeast Texas and Houston.
All right. Anthony, thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.